Good afternoon, everybody. Anthony Aniano here from RotoBaller Radio and RotoBaller.com with the Week 8 value and sleeper plays for your 2022 fantasy football season. As always, recording this right on the brink of the Thursday night matchup, so hopefully no injuries or anything like that occur over the next couple of days that would force any of these players to be forced out of your lineup and off of our value and sleeper play list. Guys, don't forget, go to RotoBaller.com, check out all the content, use the promo code ACES, and like and subscribe right here to the RotoBaller YouTube channel for all sorts of great content from the beginning to the end of the week, including waiver wire, start sits, and this, the value and sleeper play video. And we'll start at the quarterback position. It's a deep dive, but I'm deep diving to Andy Dalton of the Saints against the Las Vegas Raiders. Coming off a great game last week. Well, depending on how you look at it, right? A lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns. Also, a lot of interceptions. Very Jameis Winston-esque was Andy Dalton's performance. And keep in mind, Andy Dalton replacing Jameis Winston. No injury designation for Jameis Winston. This is based on performance. Andy Dalton, the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. Now, what's interesting, okay, he's $5,500 on DraftKings, and Andy Dalton in a DraftKings format averaging 17.2 fantasy points per game, which is the same amount of points per game as Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr, who we use on a regular basis. This week, Andy Dalton against the Raiders allow 25 points per game on the defensive side of the ball and allow 26.9 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. They've allowed 13 passing touchdowns in 6 games already this season, third most in the league. Okay, they rank 32nd in the league, dead last in points per game to quarterbacks, okay, with that 26.9. So nobody's has a better matchup this week than Andy Dalton against the Vegas Raiders. At the running back position, my first running back on the Week 8 sleeper and value play video, Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins against the Detroit Lions, averaging 10.7 DraftKings points per game and priced at $5,900 this week on DraftKings. Lions are 30th in the league against opposing running backs. Okay, they allow 29.5 fantasy points per game in a PPR format to those running backs and have allowed 10 touchdowns to the running back position already this year. Chase Edmonds has proven to really be a non-factor. Tua is back and healthy. He's got his wide receivers. Raheem Mostert clearly leading the way. And yet, still people we question, myself and the rest of the RotoBaller Radio hosts, about Mostert. This week, he is a play against the Detroit Lions. Following him up, I'm going back-to-back weeks on Tony Pollard. And last week, I recommended him because of matchup. This week, I recommend him based on matchup and opportunity. Ezekiel Elliott potentially out. Looks like he's out. Things can change. Dallas already, though, kind of saying they don't expect him to play because of the sprained knee. Now, Pollard, a little more expensive than what we normally see on DraftKings this week at $6,100. And even without a full-time job, he is averaging 10.6 points per game on DraftKings. Good matchup against the Bears. Bears defense, tough against the pass, tough against quarterbacks and wide receivers. But they are 25th in the league against opposing running backs, with running backs averaging 25 points per game and 7 total touchdowns. That back, even with Zeke Elliott in, I don't mind Tony Pollard. With Zeke Elliott out, Tony Pollard is a must-start. Don't question it. Get him in your lineups, and at $6,100 is still a terrific price as a sleeper or value play for Week 8. At the wide receiver position, I'm going to continue picking on the Raiders' pass defense. Get Chris Olave in your lineup. He's averaging 16.8 points per game, yet he's still, in my opinion, undervalued at $6,000 on DraftKings. The Raiders allow 13 passing touchdowns this season, as I mentioned earlier, with Andy Dalton, 6 of which are to wide receivers. They allow 35.5 fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. And let's be honest about this, Chris Olave has emerged, I think, as if not the wide receiver 1 on that Saints team, but a strong wide receiver 2 whenever Michael Thomas is healthy. Now, I know the Saints will run gimmicky stuff with Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara's in the mix, but at 16.8 points per game, Chris Olave is still a terrific value at $6,000 in a matchup where they should be able to throw the ball against the Raiders defense. Second wide receiver, DJ Moore, coming off the best game of his season last week at 19.6 fantasy points. Yet he's still only 5,300 on DraftKings, and he brought his average of 10 up to 10 points per game. PJ Walker looked for him early and often last week. Walker will be starting again this week against an Atlanta defense that is 32nd in the league against opposing wide receivers. Dead last. Atlanta does a terrible job shutting down opposing wide receivers. They've allowed 46.2 fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. Of the 13 passing touchdowns they've allowed, 11 of them to wide receivers this year. Great opportunity for DJ Moore against the Atlanta Falcons to build off of last week's performance. And finally, at the tight end position, take a look at Irv Smith of the Minnesota Vikings against the Arizona Cardinals. Irv Smith is averaging 7.3 points per game on DK, but he's priced at only $3,500 this week. A bargain price for a tight end with a great matchup. Arizona allows the second most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. They are 31st in the league. Tight ends are averaging 20.3 points per game against that Cardinal defense, with 6 touchdowns in total for tight ends this season against Arizona. So in recap, my Week 8 value and sleeper plays for your fantasy football team at the quarterback position is Andy Dalton. Running backs, Raheem Mostert and Tony Pollard. Wide receivers, Chris Olave and DJ Moore. And the value sleeper play at the tight end position, take a look at Irv Smith of the Minnesota Vikings. Folks, follow me on Twitter at Aniano Fantasy. Make sure you like and subscribe right here to the RotoBaller YouTube channel. And sign up right now for that RotoBaller Premium Pass. Team sync tools, lineup optimizers, waiver wire, start sit, you name it. RotoBaller.com has it for you. So take advantage of that discount of 10% when using that promo code ACES. Like and subscribe right here to the RotoBaller YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time right here on RotoBaller Radio.